On the 20th anniversary of his death, Elvis Aaron Presley is probably the most famous man in the world. Across the globe, celebrations, memorials and festivals are being held in his honor. His songs are being played day and night, and his films are being shown in an emotional salute to the king of rock and roll. There are few performers who can claim over 4 decades of longevity and sales of over 1 billion records worldwide. But 43 years after he recorded his first single, That's Alright Mama, Elvis Presley is more of an icon today than ever. I'm radio journalist Max Hasanovich, and throughout this audio documentary we shall be looking at what drives people, some of whom were not even born before he died, to worship him, write songs in tribute to his greatness and even impersonate him. Elvis impersonator Gary Jay from the Susan Scott Agency in London currently holds 2 world records. The first for singing 100 Elvis songs in 9 hours and 20 minutes, and the second for the longest tribute concert ever to be held. We spoke to Gary.
Yeah, on Saturday, the existing world record for singing a number of Elvis songs in a single performance stood at 69, which was established by an Elvis impersonator in the States in March of this year. And on Saturday, we actually broke that record. We sung 100 Elvis songs continuously in a single performance, and it also established another record, which was the fact that it was the longest Elvis tribute show, which was 9 hours, 20 minutes as well. So it established 2 world records in one hit.
So what did you start with and what did you finish with?
We started with CC Rider, we finished with Can't Help Falling in Love.
That's fabulous. But Gary, what is it that draws you towards Elvis, and why do you enjoy doing this so much?
What actually draws me to Elvis, I think he's just a unique character, basically. I don't think there'll ever be another character like Elvis Presley. I mean, he was so charismatic in his live performance. There was a real sort of persona around him, and it's the charismatic performance really that draws me to Elvis more than anything. And I've been a big fan of his music ever since I was a young lad.
So, I mean, how many Elvis impersonators are there, and are you quite a close little group?
Yeah, there are quite a few. I mean, to quote numbers, I wouldn't like to do that off the top of my head. There are quite a number of Elvis impersonators. Obviously some people do full performances. Some people are more lookalikes as opposed to sound-alikes, where I'll classify myself more as a sound-alike as opposed to a lookalike, although obviously we wear the full gear and wig, etc. But, yeah, I mean, there are a number of them, and, yeah, it's quite a nice little club, actually.
And lastly, Gary, what do you think the man's allure is, and why is he as potent now as he ever was?
Basically, as I said before, it's just because the guy was so charismatic. I think, he was really the king of rock and roll. He established rock and roll. He changed musical history, really. And I think also because he went through many different phases within his career as well. It's drawn so many people because you've got like his early rock and roll period through to the real Las Vegas showtime as such. And I think it appeals to such a wide diversity of people. I think that's basically what it is. And I think basically he died too young, really, as far as most people are concerned. And those fans have never wanted to let go of the memory of the king. And I think that's why they want it to live on. And I think it will do. I think it will continue and continue and continue.
Elvis was born in Tupelo, Mississippi on the 8th of January 1935 to Vernon Elvis Presley and his wife Gladys. At 13, he moved with his family to Memphis, Tennessee, and it was there that he was to make his first recording at Sun Studios, owned by the renowned producer Sam Phillips. 1954, the year of his first record release, was also the year that he signed his first professional contract, not with the infamous Colonel Parker, but with the band leader and booking agent W.S. Moore III. The contract, countersigned by his parents on the 12th of July 1954, gave Moore exclusive control. It reads, whereas W.S. Moore III is a band leader and a booking agent, and Elvis Presley, a minor, aged 19 years old, is a singer of reputation and renown, and possesses bright promises of large success, it is the desire of both parties to enter into this professional management contract for the best interests of both parties. It is agreed that W.S. Moore III will take over the complete management of the professional affairs of the said Elvis Presley, book him professionally for all appearances that can be secured for him, and to promote him, generally, in his professional endeavours. The said W.S. Moore III is to receive, as his compensation for his services, 10% of all earnings from engagements, appearances, and bookings made by him for Elvis Presley. It is understood and agreed that this is an exclusive contract, and the said Elvis Presley agrees not to sign any other contract pertaining to his professional work, nor make any appearances at any time for any other person or manager or booking agent for a period of 1 year. That said, Elvis released 5 records with Sun, including Mystery Chain, which topped the Billboard and country western charts in 1955. That same year, an illegal Dutch immigrant, Andreas Cornelius van Kuik, took over his management contract. Mr. Van Kuik, better known by his alias of Colonel Tom Parker, of course, negotiated a new record deal for the young star. And in November 1955, RCA handed over an unprecedented sum of $35,000 to Sun Records for Elvis's recording contract. Elvis's style was a unique mixture of the blues and hillbilly country. He crossed musical thresholds, and his vocal quality and delivery sent women weak at their knees. Antonia Cooling, editor of international publication The Singer magazine, was impressed by his vocal talents.
Vocally, Elvis had an extremely good voice, a very good basic voice. I think he would have made a very good classical singer if he decided to go that way, but thank God he didn't. Especially in the later years, you can hear the quality of his voice, but the longevity of it, why it's still popular today, even after he's died, is a curious thing. I think he was the first one to put the raw sex into rock and roll. Obviously, you can't distinguish the voice from the rest of him because he had it all, and strong individuality, but the voice is so sexy, and all the previous young male singers were quite squeaky clean, and sort of processed, and it was like he had bypassed the process of the record industry and was a real individual. It's a very evocative voice, which is probably why it still lives on today. Obviously people who have grown up with him are looking for something in the past, and that's why they still follow him. I also think that going back to the sex in his voice, I think it was also, it may be, people may argue with this, and maybe a little bit controversial to say it, but I have heard people say that it was a very black voice, and he brought blackness from because of where he came from. He brought blackness to rock and roll as well, and everything that entails. And yet it was given the supposedly acceptable white face, which made it all right for people to like that kind of music, for white people to like that kind of music, which they might have been a bit frightened to do otherwise. The ones who came after him, Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, people like that, they followed in his footsteps, but I think because he was the first one to openly display sexuality in rock and roll on stage, and again it all came down to his voice.
The heady mix of Elvis's vocal ability and sex appeal made him a very saleable commodity, and as his record sales went from strength to strength, Elvis began to make more and more TV appearances. British music industry veteran and broadcaster Willie Morgan, who we'll hear quite a bit from on this audio documentary, was head of promotion at RCA UK from 1972 to 77.
I think that Elvis Presley captured the public imagination in a way that the others could only hope to. For a start, when you mention Fats Domino, Little Richard and Chuck Berry, they were black. Like it or no, white parents didn't appreciate, in some areas, in some states, didn't like their kids buying records by black artists. They weren't even allowed to listen to radio stations that played black artists. These days, in the 90s, that sounds horrendous, but that's the way it was. Buddy Holly, who, no question, is absolutely marvellous, didn't quite have the image of Elvis Presley. He either looked very squint-eyed or he looked bespectacled, and it wasn't the image of a raunchy rock and roll star. It was the way that Elvis Presley looked that differentiated him from the rest of the pack. His appearances on the TV shows like the Ed Sullivan Show, the Milton Berle Show, the Steve Allen Show had him. Well, there was one famous occasion where he was dressed up in a tuxedo singing to a basset hound wearing a top hat, but otherwise that embarrassment. Elvis just looked so different. He had, well, because it wasn't colour TV, but one would assume they were either pink or very light jackets. He wore dark shirts, he wore ties. His hair was, when he stepped on stage, was immaculate, but from the very first gyration it was extremely unkempt, and I'm sure that was part of the plan. It was styled in such a way. His movements, his gyrations, were something that just hadn't been seen before, and indeed it caused an uproar in certain quarters. He was dubbed to be obscene. It was, in fact, there was an occasion where one TV show where they only had him on condition that he was shot from the waist upwards. They weren't allowed to see his legs going all over the place. But that was part of his show. I mean, if you see footage of some of the early stage shows, some of the ones at the Mississippi and Alabama dairy show that he performed in, that was the way he was. The music moved him.
These men come down here from New York and from Florida to find out my reasons on rock and roll music and why I preach against it, and I believe with all of my heart that it is a contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today. I 100% believe it. Why I believe that is because I know how it feels when you sing it. I know what it does to you. And I know the evil feeling that you feel when you sing it. I know the lost position that you get into in the beat.
I've been getting some pretty bad publicity lately, especially after the Milton Berle show. I got quite a bit of bad publicity with my actions on the stage out there, but...
I'll tell you one thing, Elvis Presley. We have 50,000 watts, and they're very strong here in the New Orleans area, and you'll never hear anything other than Elvis Presley is a very fine person here. And I can speak in behalf of Larry Monroe and Hal Murray and Jim Edwards on the Night Train and Mickey Scott and all the personnel here who have talked with you. We have been playing your records for a long time.
Well, thank you very much. I've been listening to your station for the past couple of days ever since I've been down here, and I can say that, and I certainly appreciate it a lot because if there wasn't somebody on my side, I'd be lost, you know.
Well, I find I have a little note here. Ellery Wagner is the new president for the New Orleans fan club for Elvis Presley, I take it. Have you met, is it a young man, is it, Ellery? Oh, it's a girl. I see. Have you met Miss Wagner?
I don't believe I have. If I did, it was a long time ago, and I forgot it. Back when I was in New Orleans when I first started out in the business.
Oh, you were in New Orleans?
Yes, I was at Pontchartrain Beach. And that's back when I first started out. And I've been around quite a bit since then. I've met so many people till it's hard to remember.
Well, I heard the Democratic Party is trying to buy the Elvis Presley block of votes. That's what I hear. Well,
I'm afraid that the biggest part of them would be kind of too young to vote, you know.
I want to ask you one other thing. I was reading one of the trade magazines. You made the statement, whether or not you made it or not, we'll find out, that I want to make it while I'm hot. In reference to I mentioned earlier, a disc jockey who said he would pay you $1 a minute for every minute he interviewed you on the air. And Elvis, please don't hold me to that because I have to sell the station.
Well, that's one of the most untrue rumors that I've heard yet. I've never even, in fact, it's the first time I've ever even thought of anything like that when you mentioned it. But I think it's a good idea, so.
A lot of people that possibly don't like you, you know. And there are a number of people who don't like me, and probably Bob Hope right down the line. But what you do well. So I don't know why people, it's just a certain amount of integrity that should go with this. Like these quotes here and there that you read about you, now that you say there's no truth to them.
Well, Mr. Stewart, I'll tell you like this. I was telling a reporter a little earlier today, there's people, regardless of who you are or what you do, there's going to be people that don't like you. There were people that didn't like Jesus Christ. They killed him, and Jesus Christ was a perfect man, you know. And there's going to be people that don't like you regardless of who you are or what you do, because if everybody thought the same way, they'd be driving the same car, they'd be marrying the same woman, and that wouldn't work out, you know.
That's right. There's a lot of philosophy there. Very, very much so. Well, how about your new release? I've got 1 million calls. I know that Mickey and Larry Monroe and Hal Murray and Jim Edwards have all received the same call. Why don't you play Hound Dog? And we can't find it. And,
well, it's probably because I hadn't made it yet. It would be Hound Dog should be out in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Now, I'm not sure, but I've got it to record yet. But, I mean, after you record it, it don't take them just a week or two to get it out.
Elvis, do you think there's any chance that you might send us an exclusive on it?
I'll see if I can get my manager to send you one of the first copies that comes out.
Oh, we'd appreciate that, and we'll play it till the old dog's tongue's hanging. I mean, do you write most of the lyrics for your tunes?
No, I've never written a song.
Never written a song?
I've never written a song in my life. I wish I could. I wish I was like some of my rivals, Carl Perkins and Gene Vincent. Those guys, they're pretty good songwriters, but me, I did good to get out of high school, you know. And,
well,
I've never written a song.
Well, you don't need, you just keep singing. But tell me one thing else. How long do you plan to be in Biloxi? Are you going back to Biloxi now?
No, I'm not. I'm going to Miami, Florida.
Miami, Florida?
Yes.
Are you booked down there?
No, I'm on vacation. I'm off for about 3 weeks. It's the first vacation I've had since I've been in the business.
I see.
I've been in the business about 43 years now.
Let's see. Energy he uses, eating sugar, take box candy. Take half box candy.
What does that mean?
Oh, sugar, 8 half box. Oh, Elvis, did you eat up that box of candy I gave June? I got 1 piece.
Well, it was very good candy. I saw the price tag on the bottom of it, you know, 98 cents, but...
Don't worry, I stole it.
No, it was very good candy. I didn't know who it belonged to. It was just sitting in front of me, and I was eating it.
I see. Well, you're sitting in front of him. Well, I'd like to play an Elvis Presley tune here.
Who? Gene Vincent?
Gene Vincent. This boy is, come on. But,
I met Gene in New York. I met him last week. He was in the train station up there. I was going to New York, from New York to Memphis. And Gene Vincent was in a train station. And, I didn't know who he was. One of the boys in my band knew him. And I walked over and introduced myself to him, and it's the first time I had ever seen him, or he had seen me on shows, but he had never, I had never met him. And I told him, I said, Gene, I said, congratulations on your record. I said, you really got a hit. And right immediately, the first thing he said was, well, I wasn't trying to copy you, he said. He said, I wasn't trying to sound like you. Just right off of the bat, he said that, see, without even being asked.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, oh, I know that. I said, that's just your natural style. But the boy has got out a very good record. And I have people ask me all the time what I think about these people that sound a lot like me. I was the first one to come out with it, I reckon, as far as I can remember. But those people that are using the style, I don't blame them. I'd probably jump on the bandwagon too.
There was a lot of anti-feeling towards Elvis Presley from the southern states, because basically it was a white boy singing black man's music. It had never been done before. Presley had been brought up initially in Tupelo, Mississippi, and later on when his mother and father, Gladys and Vernon, moved to Memphis. Although he went to Humes High School, which was fundamentally a white school, he was mixing with black children. He was hearing black musicians. In Memphis, even in the 50s, there wasn't the kind of prejudice prevalent in all areas, so it was quite understandable that a white kid could pick up on black music. And country music came, which Elvis Presley was doing, came in 2 directions. It either came, let me correct myself, rock and roll music had 2 roots, 2 diverse roots, but who met in the middle. One was from country music, and you get, for example, Jerry Lee Lewis. His influences were definitely country music. Or you get the blues influence of rock and roll music, where the likes of B.B. King, who was recorded in Memphis, and a lot of the stuff that came through Sun had the R&B feel. And Sam Phillips, who had some of the country influence artists, as I said, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Elvis Presley was a mixture of the 2, and this was pretty unique. And even Sam Phillips wasn't sure what to do with Elvis Presley when he first heard him recorded.
But the controversy over Elvis only served to make him more popular. So great was his lure that 1 out of every 3 Americans had seen him by this time. In response, the record company marketed him with more ferocity, and more effort was made to enhance his recordings.
The sound of Presley's records changed quite dramatically in a very short space of time. From the early days at Sun, with the very Spartan conditions of the studio at 706 Union Avenue in Memphis, Sam Phillips was able to get a real country hillbilly sound out of songs like That's All Right And perhaps his finest moment at Sun was the recording of Little Junior Parker's Mystery Train, which has turned out to be generally known as a Sun standard. But of course, RCA Records came along with this huge transfer fee, as it were. Sam Phillips was paid quite a considerable amount of dollars to release Presley from his contract, and indeed Elvis himself received what we call a signing on fee. And all of a sudden, Elvis Presley was an RCA artist. He was put under the aegis of Steve Scholes, who was in charge of the A&R function of that division of RCA. And his first actual recording for RCA was the old Ray Charles song, I've Got a Woman. However, it was the first single that RCA put out, which was the double-sided song of Heartbreak Hotel and I Was the One. And Heartbreak Hotel was completely different to anything people had heard before. Lyrically, it was a song about a suicidal who was down at the end of Lonely Street on Heartbreak Hotel. The song written, or co-written by Mae Axton, who, and this is an interesting piece of trivia, her son, Hoyt Axton, had a song recorded by Elvis Presley, and so it's the only time we know of that a mother and son had different songs that they had written recorded by Elvis Presley. So Heartbreak Hotel and I Was the One, and then we got onto songs again that just sounded so different. Elvis Presley covered Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoler's Hound Dog. This is a song that was perhaps best known up to that point by Big Mama Thornton, Willie Mae Thornton, who had done it as an out-and-out blues shouter. Elvis had seen Freddie Bell and the Bellboys performing it live at Las Vegas whilst he had been on tour up that part. Must have been around 1956. And it was probably Freddie Bell's arrangement of Hound Dog that Elvis was more influenced by, particularly the line, because Freddie Bell did it as a comedy record, and the line about "you ain't never caught a rabbit, you ain't no friend of mine" was very much part of his act, and that's Elvis copied that. And Hound Dog, coupled with Don't Be Cruel, was the first time that the Jordanaires were brought in to add backing vocal accompaniment to Elvis Presley.
A couple of weeks after the release of Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel, Elvis gave this interview to Bob Hoffa.
The guy just has to have a little time of his own, and he has little enough of it. So he is gracious enough to ask us to come up here and talk with him in the dressing room. And there are, let's see, 3 of his buddies here, and Joanne is over in the corner. So you're in good company with Elvis Presley. And Elvis, I'm awfully glad to take this opportunity to talk with you a little bit.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. It's a pleasure, too. And is that your wife over in the corner?
That is my wife, Joanne, yes.
Woo!
Now, Joanne will be the envy of everybody at the platter party tonight. She has been wooed at by Elvis Presley, and I thank you, Elvis. I agree with you, incidentally. Sure I do. You know what I was impressed, first of all, when I saw you? You're a taller boy than I had figured. How tall are you, incidentally?
Even 6 foot.
Are you? I had not pictured you as quite so tall. You, what sports have you indulged in, any, when you were in school?
Well, I tried to play football, and I never could make it, and I was very good at it. So I...
Gave it up for the get fiddle slinging, huh?
Yeah.
I don't blame you a miserable bit, not as well as you've done. What I would like to find out from you, I know that probably your tough problem on these tours is getting enough rest to do the job you do on the stage. How do you manage the confounded rest on these tours?
Well, I don't. In fact, I don't any of us get much rest. We just, and it's a lot worse when you do 2 or 3 shows a day, 3 and 4. We do 4 sometimes.
So you just have to catch it when you can, is that right?
That's right. And then usually when it's all over with, there's a lot of people around, and you just don't get much rest at all.
So just between tours, you've got to climb in the sack somewhere and rest a little while. Is that the idea?
Yes, that's right. We average maybe 4 or 5 hours a night.
Where do you call home now?
Memphis, Tennessee.
Your parents up there now in the nice big house you bought them?
Yes, sir.
I heard a lot about that, and it's a fine thing. Something else I heard about, too, at a piece of your property. I heard the bad luck you had with the Lincoln over in Tampa. Is that true? About in the garage?
Oh, that wasn't too bad. Some of the kids got my gas cap and some of my cigarette lighters, but that was the fault of the garage.
I see. Somebody said they got in the hubcaps, too. Is that not true?
No, that's
Oh, am I so glad. I could just see you buying 4 hubcaps for a Lincoln. That would cost more than the car I drive, believe me. You pretty
Well,
proud of... Go ahead.
I think the Continental hubcaps are $50 each. It's $200 for a set, you know.
Wow. What's this $350 hood ornament you were telling Ann Rowe of the St.
Yes,
Petersburg Times about?
the ornament on the Lincoln Continental is $350 because it's white gold plated.
Yeah. Wow. Listen, the one thing I did want to check with you on, I know you don't get a chance to keep up with things too much when you're on the tour. Did you know that Ed Sullivan was injured in an automobile accident the
Yes,
other night?
sir. I read that in the paper.
It is. He is not going to be able to make his show until the 19th of August.
Is that right?
That's the first one he'll be able to make.
Yeah.
I thought you might be interested in that. And when are you due on the Sullivan Show again?
Well, my first one is September 9th.
9th, huh? Maybe have a new platter out for Victor by that time?
I doubt it.
You doubt it, really?
I shouldn't have because I just had a release. See.
Oh, yes, and you've done pretty well with it, too. Over 1 million copies in something like 2 weeks for Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel. Is that right? Yeah. 3 gold platters you've got yourself now for Victor, and I think it's a fine thing. 4! Excuse me! 4.
I got one for Heartbreak Hotel,
Yeah.
one for Hound Dog, one for I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, and one for my album.
The album, too, has gone over 1 million.
Yes, sir.
No kidding. That's almost fantastic in the record business, isn't it? Well, Elvis, there are a couple of other things. I saw in the paper night before last that Hal Wallace is thinking of starring you in a picture with Jerry Lewis. Had you heard that one?
Jerry Lewis.
With Jerry Lewis. Had you heard it?
No,
Really?
I hadn't.
Well, there's something for you to think
You know,
about.
Dean and Jerry broke up.
Yes, that's true. So...
I heard something about that, but I mean, I wouldn't, I don't think I'd...
What do you mean?
I don't know.
You don't think you and Jerry get along?
That's Dean Martin. Well, it's not that, but
Sure.
that's Dean Martin, and it'll always be Dean and Jerry, nothing else.
Well, I sort of agree with you on it. Speaking about partners and enemies and so forth, what's the Pat Boone situation with you? You know Pat.
Well, I know Pat very well. I didn't know anything about anything like that except when I read this radio, TV Mirror, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, they said Presley and Boone battled it out. Well, that's nothing. I mean, Pat Boone and I are very good friends.
And you're not fighting with Pat Boone at all?
Never. Pat's one of the nicest guys I ever met, and I'm sure I mean, I don't think he'd say anything bad about me, you know.
No, I think the only time you've crossed swords on songs is Tutti Frutti, isn't it? It's the only two that you've, the both of you have cut.
Both of us had a flop on it, so we didn't have anything to fight about, really.
Good. Okay. Well, we've had quite a time here with Elvis, and he's getting ready to take off, I know, and to finish that lunch, I guess, he had here.
Well, I didn't have enough. They didn't bring me but one sandwich, and that's just an appetizer.
There was one other thing I wanted to check with you. What has been your own personal reaction to the reaction of your fans as a result of the Steve Allen appearance?
Well, the kids didn't like it, you know. In other words, they were writing letters in and telling them to leave me alone, leave me the way I was, and all that. But I believe that I won a lot of new friends, you know, by doing that, by showing them that I could act like a gentleman if I wanted to.
Well, he doesn't mean it. Go ahead.
Which is not the way that I, you know, started out.
Sure. Well, Elvis, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Gosh, I know you got 1,000 things to do, and I thank you for this 5 or 6 minutes. It's been wonderful, and Joanne and I can go home, and Joanne can sit there starry-eyed after having been wooed at. And I thank you so much for this time, and I personally want you to know that on the Bob Hoffer Show, there are no anti-Elvis Presley fan clubs at all. It's all for Elvis Presley, and that we spin at least 3 to 4 of your records each evening in a 45-minute period as the result of the demand of the kids. So, and I also want you to know that as a result of our poll at our platter party Saturday night, Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel were number 1 and 2 in St. Petersburg in that order with the kids. And I think that ought to be good news to you. Okay, thanks very much, Elvis, and
Thank
lots
you,
of luck
sir.
in the future.
Thank you very much.
Right, bye.
It was not just Elvis's voice and delivery which were causing a stir. His bumping and grinding hips had caused enough controversy for filmmakers to stand up and take notice. With his dark hair now dyed black, Elvis made his first screen appearance in 1956 in Love Me Tender. Willie Morgan takes up the story.
Once things started to take off, the movies beckoned, and he was approached, or Parker was approached to put him into a movie. In fact, I'm trying to get my facts right now. He was signed initially to one movie company but leased off to another, one of which was Paramount, to make a western, of which he was going to have an introductory role. And the film was called The Reno Brothers, and Elvis Presley recorded a song to be sung in the film over the credits, a song called Love Me Tender. Well, the song took off so quickly that before the film got released they changed the title of the movie to Love Me Tender, and that was his first movie, a black and white movie. That was followed by Loving You, in fact, which the character he played pretty much mirrored the story of a young rock and roll star getting to a few scrapes and fights and singing some good songs, and that wasn't a bad movie. Of course, then came Jailhouse Rock, which again was shot in black and white. He co-starred with Mickey Shaughnessy, who played the part of the what we call in England the old lag, the old long-time prison cellmate. And Elvis Presley in the film played the part of Vince Everett, who'd been convicted of manslaughter because he killed a man in a fight. But all's well that ends well. In it, the very, very famous sequence where he performed Jailhouse Rock was he actually choreographed himself, and it's stood the test of time. It still looks great, even though we still only see it in black and white. And of course, the song is a standout song and become an absolute standard, Jailhouse Rock. The other great song in the film, or well, there's a couple, but Young and Beautiful is a song that's much loved by his fans, and that's a song that's played over the closing credits of the movie. Well, Elvis was called up to be in the army whilst he was in production of making his fourth movie, King Creole, a movie in which he co-starred with Walter Matthau. The soundtrack album was wonderful. It was a really good album with lots of strong songs, because just going back to Jailhouse Rock, there never was a soundtrack album to that. A couple of records got released as singles or on EP tracks, but there never was an album. But a King Creole album was absolutely superb. And his call up to the army was deferred until the movie was finished. And of course, throughout the time he was in the army, there was a bit of a stockpile of songs released, and so there were constant singles released by Elvis Presley during that time. He even got back into the studios during leave to go and record more songs.
Eventually, Elvis was transferred to Germany to finish his military service. He gave this interview to German reporters.
I was very surprised at the reception. I wasn't expecting anything quite that big, and I only regret that I didn't have more time to stay there with them. But maybe someday I can come back when my army tour is up as an entertainer, and then I'll have more time, and maybe I'll have an opportunity to kind of make myself at home over here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presley, and we wish you a pleasant stay in Germany.
Thank you very much.
During the time Elvis was in the army, there was a lot of thinking in the music industry and in the show business whether rock and roll would actually live, you know, because everything was expected to be a passing fad. And one of the greatest critics of rock and roll music was Frank Sinatra, who thought it was obscene and had no time for it or its performers. I mean, Frank Sinatra was a generation before, and his generation of artists like him and Dean Martin and people of that ilk really didn't have any time for rock and roll. But it's interesting that in 1960 Sinatra had a TV series that was sponsored by Timex running and wasn't doing really well. The ratings were pretty poor, and to give the show a boost, it was arranged that he would have as his guest star Elvis Presley in his first performance after coming out of the army. One thinks that Sinatra wasn't too keen on this, but it happened anyway. And in fact, an arranger hastily knitted together arrangements of two songs, and on the show, Frank Sinatra sang Love Me Tender, whilst Elvis Presley sang Witchcraft, in sync with each other.
The songs Elvis sang were now coming from the movies he starred in, but although the quality of Elvis's acting was highly praised, the fans were becoming more and more disillusioned with the films themselves. I spoke to Graham Oliver, film reviewer for the European publication Satellite Times, and asked him what he considered to be Elvis's strongest film.
I'd say that Jailhouse Rock proves beyond a doubt that Presley was capable of being an exciting and assured actor, and many non-Presley fans who think his movies all sort of innocuous, everything is beautiful comedies, they're usually surprised by how hard-hitting Jailhouse Rock is. I mean, he boldly and convincingly tackles an arrogant, sullen, selfish character with a sort of angry method intensity, but without any of the effective method mannerisms. You know, I mean, he can easily sort of give James Dean and Marlon Brando a mumble money. He walks it like he talks it in this film, you know. And that was a very brave but shrewd merchandising move at such an early stage in his career, because it really capitalised on the air of erotic danger about him that the grown-ups were so sort of shocked about, you know. I think that the kind of the sort of wholesome comedies that many people associate with just missed the entire point, really, because the whole point about Presley, I think, was that, you know, he was the guy that you wouldn't take home to your parents. You know, he was shocking your parents listening to this guy. You know, and he was someone that your parents were supposed to disapprove of. And here he was playing these sort of likeable, prickly type characters in his frothy family matinee movies. You know, and I just think they missed the point. They were totally compatible with that kind of dangerous element that the teenagers associate with, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he was clearly a big pull at the box office. Why do you feel the studios tried to portray him as the innocent boy next door and not give him meatier, harder-edge roles?
I think perhaps that they were scared that he could, well, maybe it scared a few people that he could play such a convincingly unlikable character, you know, in say Jailhouse Rock and to a certain extent King Creole as well, which some people would argue is a better film. And also bearing in mind that Colonel Parker had the sort of final say on these scripts, you know, and they're obviously trying to manoeuvre him into, you know, a more likeable mode, that someone you could take home to your parents, which, as I say, kind of missed the whole point. I mean, having said that, he did demonstrate a natural flair for light comedy in those films, and many of them, like say Clam Bake and Kissing Cousins, are hugely enjoyable on a purely kitsch level. We just wished he tackled, you know, something more challenging, say the way that Sinatra did. I mean, he made the successful transition to straight dramatic roles, and he was sort of provoking similar kind of fan hysteria in his youth, you know. I mean, I think Elvis would have been great in the kind of rugged Steve McQueen type action roles in the late 60s, and instead he was sort of frolicking around in Paradise to Wine style and Spin Out, you know. Most people sort of enjoy them now as a kind of, you know, look down at them camp kind of level, you know. And I think they were, and also they were kind of sort of willfully going against what was popular at the time. I mean, they were kind of really past their prime in those days anyway. I mean, I think it would have been certainly interesting to see him in a straight, dramatic crime movie. I mean, he would have made a great anti-hero on the strength of his performance in Jailhouse Rock in those sort of movies. You know, he even would have made a good villain, I suspect.
Throughout the 60s, it's fair to say that the quality of Elvis's movies gradually deteriorated, but it's all very well being critical of these movies. It's fair to say, though, that each one threw out at least one, if not more, good songs. Blue Hawaii, for example, wasn't the greatest piece of cinematography ever, but Can't Help Falling in Love is an absolute standard. Fun in Acapulco also wasn't a great movie, really, but Bossa Nova Baby happens to be a particular favourite of mine, as is the film Girls, Girls, Girls. Again, as a movie, not much, but Return to Sender happens to be my personal favourite Elvis song, so it means something to me. Viva Las Vegas with the title song, I mean, you know, look at the covers, ZZ Top did that. If these songs were really rubbish, then people wouldn't be doing them again. Elvis was having songs written for him almost on demand. Teams of songwriters, Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, wrote a great many songs, many of which were used in Jailhouse Rock. In fact, one of them played the part of Elvis's piano player in Jailhouse Rock, got a bit part. Elvis always managed to get his friends bits of work as extras, so if you study the Elvis movies, you'll always see either friends of Elvis or one really interesting piece of trivia, and this is well documented, but it is worth noting. In the movie It Happened at the World's Fair, there's one sequence where Elvis is trying to get close to a certain nurse at the World's Fair in Seattle, and stops a young boy in the fair and said, "Hey kid, kick me in the shins, I'll give you 25 cents. And the kid says, "Are you mad? Are you nuts?" But anyway, he gave him a kick, and he went in. And later on in the film, he turns up again and said, "Hey, mister, do you want me another kick?" And this time he blew it because he was with said nurse. But the actor who played this young kid, who must have been all of about 10 or 11 years of age, was Kurt Russell, who later went on to play the part of Elvis in Elvis the movie. So, interesting piece of trivia. What goes around comes around, I think they say. As I said, lots of teams of songwriters were writing for Elvis. Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann, Weisman, Giant, Bauman, Kay, all these great teams of American songwriters who were writing on demand ostensibly for the movies, but they did come up with some good songs. Occasionally, of course, Elvis did go back and re-record old songs in his own inimitable style. And you got hits like Such a Night, which had been a #1 hit in Britain for Johnny Ray and had been recorded by the Drifters, and old songs like Crying in the Chapel. But as I say, throughout the 60s it was a bit of a steady decline, and Elvis hadn't been seen performing on TV for a number of years until that famous comeback in 1968, the NBC TV special, which again it made everyone sit up and say, wow. The producer of the TV special hadn't really got in his mind what he wanted to do, and there was one point where he was walking down the corridor where the dressing room area and found Elvis sitting jamming with some of the musicians, and they'd got out some of the originals. DJ Fontana was there, Scotty Moore was there, and it gave the producer the idea of sitting Elvis in the round and doing what is now called an unplugged set, although it wasn't unplugged because he was playing an electric guitar. But it was so disorganised, there wasn't even a strap on the guitar, and Elvis couldn't hold it properly. At one point they gave him a stool to put one leg up so he could rest the guitar. But it was just magical. There were some production numbers in it which was tremendous, and the thing that really set the whole programme off was a huge finale where Elvis by this time had thought, if I'm going to do TV, I want to just do material that is just right. And they gave him the song If I Can Dream, and that closed the show. And Elvis was back. Elvis unquestionably was back. The great thing about Presley's appearance in that 68 special was that he was a man's man as well as a woman's man. To the guys he looked great because he just looked like a, well, maybe like a biker. He looked like he looked the business in leather. Yet it wasn't a sexual thing, not at all, not to a heterosexual guy, but to women it had total sexual impact, and he never looked so well.
From this point, Elvis's success went from strength to strength, but with a failed marriage behind him, he lived only for work, right up until the tragic end of his life on the 16th of August 1977. But even death has not dulled the extraordinary popularity of the King.
Put yourself forward 100 years or more, looking in the history books, and look at the 20th century, and look at the events that changed the 20th century. 2 world wars, a couple of bad guys in the form of Hitler and Mussolini, but what changed popular culture? More than anything else, I think you can put it down to 2 things. One in the United States, one in the United Kingdom. One being Elvis Presley, the other the Beatles. It's hard to explain to people who didn't live it and didn't experience it the amount of change that Elvis Presley and indeed later the Beatles had on culture. And I'm not just talking pop music, I'm talking everything, from clothes to fashion to movies, all popular culture. Everything that changed because of those 2 icons, as it were, Beatles being a collective icon, and the events that surrounded them. You get youngsters now who talk about Oasis and how popular and how many records they sell, and a couple of years back it was Take That, and Take That you can compare to the Osmonds, but you cannot say that they changed popular culture in the Western world in the same way that Presley and the Beatles did. In fact, it wasn't just the Western world, it was the entire world, and that's what made Elvis Presley so special.
Year in, year out, fans flock to Elvis's home, Graceland, in the hope of gaining a little more insight into Elvis the person and his life. I recently spoke to Graceland's employee, Blake Roberts, in the build-up to the 20th anniversary of Elvis's death, and asked her why Elvis's popularity and legacy is still so enduring.
Well, Many of these people feel almost a family bond with Elvis. His, him starting out as a from very poor family, in a shotgun shack in Mississippi, and growing up and being a major talented person, and it's difficult to explain, actually. It's just that they feel it's kind of, by watching him live the American dream, to go from dust to major stardom, it's something, everyone wishes to do, and they feel almost a personal connection. Also, Elvis was very attentive to his fans, I guess you would say. He, came out to the gates very frequently and visited with the fans and spoke with them and, spent time with his fans. His fans were very important to him. And so they also formed a very personal bond with him, through things like that.
I see. I wonder, Blake, how many people do you normally get visiting Gracelands, and how many would you actually expect this week during the special anniversary?
We get over 700,000 people or guests per year. 1995 was a record year. We had over 750,000 people. Usually Elvis Week, we usually get about 35,000 people, but this year we're expecting to see over 50,000. And on the night of the candlelight vigil, we're expecting to see anywhere from 10 to 15 or 20,000 people. And this media coverage that we are receiving is just unprecedented. We thought the 10th anniversary was going to be huge and, beyond anything we'd ever see again, but the 20th anniversary is even bigger. Our phones, ring constantly, so it's definitely been an experience.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Elvis fans are utterly devoted towards the King. I wonder, Blake, have you seen anything locally in the last week or so that sort of proves this devotion?
There was a story in our local newspaper about a woman from Alabama that was here after Elvis died. She came up from Alabama, and she spent a few weeks up here, and she's been coming back every year in August since the year that Elvis died, and she's kept the same hotel room and everything. She comes back year after year, sometimes twice a year. Many people come back not only for the tribute week in August, but they also come back for the birthday week in January.
When you visit Graceland, you can't overlook the fact that it was somebody's home. And although it seems very grand and opulent, when you go inside it, it isn't particularly big. I mean, I've been in many famous pop stars' homes in Britain that are much, much bigger than Graceland. The front door to Graceland is a regular standard-sized front door that you'd have on anybody's house. It's not huge at all. And the dining room has a table that seats, I think, 6 or 8 people. It's not a grand, long dining table you'll see in an English stately home. And the music room has room for a piano, and that's about it. You can sit and play at the piano. And the pool room has a pool table and enough space to get around it to play your shots, but it isn't huge. And so it is. It's very much of somebody's home. So a lot of belongings there, and of course there's massive amounts of stuff in storage. They've built in a kind of museum aspect to it for the tourists, where all the gold records, a fraction of the gold records and things are on display. There are many thousands of stuff of awards that are still in storage at Graceland.
One wonders if a live 62-year-old Elvis would have been surrounded by the same mystique and hero worship as his memory. Let's hear once more from Singer magazine editor Antonia Cooling.
I don't know why they worship him as much as they do, except that they grew up with him, and you have the tragic means by which he died, and everything, in the same way that people would idolize Marilyn Monroe, because it's something that we never know. We don't know what he's like now. We don't know whether he'd be singing now what he'd sound like. The other dinosaurs of rock who are still around, and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and so on, would he be up there with them, or would he have lost it because the sexiness of his whole performance was such an important part? I don't know if it would still work.
It's an interesting question. What would Elvis Presley be doing now if he hadn't have died in 1977? Because it begs the question, would Elvis still have been alive? The way his lifestyle was at the time of his death suggests that if he hadn't have died at 42 in 1977, he might have died at 44, 46 or 48. He had allowed himself, or he had been allowed, to get grossly overweight. His medication was not what it should have been, and it is doubtful that he would have survived this long, unless, of course, his lifestyle had changed dramatically and he had broken free of the as it were, the surrounds, what's called the Memphis Mafia, and the heavy influence of Colonel Tom Parker. But there's nothing to suggest in anything you hear about Elvis Presley that he would have broken away from what Parker was doing. If he'd have done that, he'd have done it many years earlier. My feeling, however, putting all that aside, if Elvis Presley had still been alive, he would have he was already making the cross-to-country music. His later albums, where he was doing standards like There Goes My Everything and a great many country songs. And I think he would have gone across to country music in much the same way that Conway Twitty did, and much the same way that Glenn Campbell did, both of whom started out as in rock and roll business and ended up in country. I think that's where it would have gone. Charlie Rich as well, fellow Sun artist. Of course, country music in the 90s is very different to, with all the young Hattacks and the Dwight Yoakams and Travis Tritts, but each of them have covered Elvis Presley's songs, hold Presley in great respect. And to hear Dwight Yoakam doing Little Sister, or hearing Travis Tritt doing Trouble, it shows great respect to Elvis Presley.
But back to that Biloxi radio interview, and the final word from the King himself.
Well, one last question. How long do you think that rock and roll will last now? Or do you think that it's...
Well, I wish I knew. That's a question that if I could answer, I'd be making plans for the future, but I don't know. I'll say this. It's very hot now, and I like it. I enjoy rock and roll. A lot of people like it. A lot of people don't. But as long as it lasts, as long as it sells, I'll continue doing it, as long as that's what the people want. And if they change, if it dies out, I'll try to do